Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Jessanori. Today it's episode 6 of Ghost Variations. Last time, Yeli's assistant, Anna, collapsed at Wandsworth Town Station and Yeli went with her to hospital, where she was accosted by another patient with the words, "I bet you don't play for rich people." This has got under her skin. Now she's off to hospital again to visit Anna with her violin. In the smog, London had sunk into slow motion. The stinking murk would surely be enough to give anyone consumption. It was like breathing in days-old porridge. After deciding to walk the last stretch, Yeli, looking down, could see only a suggestion of her own feet. When she rounded a corner and spotted the red brick blocks of the hospital, she slowed further, wondering if they would allow her to carry out her plan. The sister at the entrance desk stared at her and her violin case. "Mr. Rani," she echoed when Yeli gave her name. "I saw you play at the winter proms. You did the Bach double concerto with Adila Fakiri. It was amazing. Please come with me. I'll take you up to Miss Robertson." She scrambled to her feet. Yeli was happy to see that she already brightened someone's day, and she hadn't yet played a note. Here the day needed brightening. In these labyrinths your footsteps resonated back through your head, and people passing kept their voices low, as if at a funeral. Though the windows were plentiful, the smog seemed to press in against the glass. She followed the nurse along a corridor, passing several wards where long rows of beds stood in ranks. At last they turned a corner into another ward and stopped beside a partially curtained booth. Anna lay on the bed within, curled into a fetal position under a starched white sheet, her light hair wispy on the pillow. Yeli, her heart cracking, hesitated, remembering how infectious consumption was. Still, it was a little late to worry. Anna had been working in their house for several years. She crouched beside Anna and spoke her name softly. The girl, who looked almost too weak to move, visibly brightened at her voice. "Yeli, you came to see me." "The fog is foggy, but it doesn't stop me." She sat on the edge of Anna's bed. "I thought I'd play you something." "Here?" Yeli followed Anna's gaze around the ward. Some patients lay asleep or listless. Others were coughing and shivering visibly despite the lack of air, while the screens of buff-coloured curtains shielded the most serious cases from sight, though not always from sound. She could feel many gazers upon her as she unpacked her violin. "Yes," she said, "here." "Oh, Mr. Rani!" The ward matron spotted her and marched over. "You can't play the violin in here. This is a hospital." "All the more reason to do so," Yeli smiled. "But it's forbidden." "Really? Just a little music to cheer people up?" "Let her play to us," came a voice across the ward. "Please, we would love it," Anna said. A chorus of further pleas around them seemed to take the matron by surprise. She cast a sceptical eye around her charges. "All right, just a few minutes." Standing near Anna's bed, Yeli played Bach for her friend, for all the patients, and inwardly for Tom, as if it were the song of a deity. Around the beds, curtains moved aside. Submerged in her task, Yeli was half aware it never allowed her concentration to waver. Anna's eyes began to shine, vivid against her fever-dimmed skin. While the music progressed, tears rose within them. An elderly woman in a corner bed, coughing and convulsing her, gathered the bedclothes against her mouth to stifle the sound. Several people who had been lying flat managed to lift themselves upright against the pillows. Their blank expressions had gone, replaced by a light of wonder. One young girl slumbered motionless throughout, but in her sleep she began to smile. At the end, Yeli lowered her violin and looked into the silence. The love she had wanted to give them was gleaming back at her from the patients, some tearful, some uncomprehending, a few lost in dreams. from 2 nurses and the matrons, who had opened her mouth and failed to close it, and from a distracted-looking doctor who had hurried in to see what was going on and stopped short, apparently as dumbfounded as if he had discovered Johann Sebastian Bach himself, waiting for treatment. "Brava, Yeli!" Anna exclaimed, finding the strength to start clapping. Gradually, as Yeli smiled, amazement dissolved into applause. She considered these people, some unable to sit up, all too ill to attend a concert, and many who wouldn't have done so even if they were well, deserved the spiritual comfort of music as much as any healthy person did, probably more. If they can't come to the music must go to them. Whoever decreed that it should only be performed in a formal venue where people pay for tickets and aren't allowed to speak to the musicians? If you wanted meaning in music, this was where you'd find it, in a place of suffering, where Bach's humanity could strike home. "Mr. Ragni," the doctor came up to shake her hand. "I do hope I'm not a disruptive influence, Doctor," Yeli said. "Well, I'd never imagined someone could simply walk in here and start playing a violin. You need to get past matron first. But," he added, when they both stopped laughing, "this is extraordinary. Look at them. You've done more good for these poor souls than we can manage in a month of Sundays." "I wouldn't go as far as that, Doctor, but I'm grateful you didn't throw me out. You know, if you'd ever like to come back and do it again, we'd be overjoyed." "I'd love to," Yeli promised. "Music and medicine are close, but sometimes not allowed to be close enough," he remarked. "We only treat the physical, whereas you can bring consolation. And that's a rarity in this place. I don't know how some of them find the will to get well again." "Yeli?" She dived back to Anna's bedside. Anna seemed to be struggling for words. "Thank you, Yeli," she managed. "I'll never forget what you did for us all today." At home, the thought of the patients, their response, the doctor's reaction, Anna's face transfigured as she listened. None of it would leave Yeli alone. She'd once played in a children's hospital which nearly skinned her heart alive, but every note there seemed to mean 10 times more than one anywhere else. At Exeter Cathedral recently, she had seen the evening light reflected in the eyes of her audience while she played, amid a silence more intimate than that of a salon, despite the gaping space. Or perhaps because of it. Music as human goodness incarnate, that was what Tom saw in her. He knew that was the best she could give. Now she felt she had a doctor's blessing as well. For that vision, defiant, she resolved her direction. She would set herself against the supposed spirits of the dead, towards healing the proven ones of the living. She hunted through Anna's desk for her concert diary. There, at the bottom of the last drawer, lay the paper on which she had written down the message from Schumann, if Schumann it were. Her hand hovered above it, vacillating, as if to touch it would be to accept its content. Why was she keeping it, if she could not do that? Why couldn't she forget? The image of the concerto, if concerto there were, troubled her. She pictured it shut away somewhere similar to that hospital, stricken and mute. She couldn't save Tom. She could help Anna without being able to make her well again. But if there really were a piece of music to rescue... Yeli pushed the thought away, slammed the drawer shut, and tried another. At last, diary retrieved, she licked her fingertips and began to turn the pages. The winter 6 or 8 months away was relatively quiet, and most of her concerts were in Britain. There had to be moments in which she and the largest venues she could find would be free on the same evening. She could go any time to play her violin in hospitals, in ordinary schools as well as Eton, working men's clubs besides the Wigmore Hall. But the idea that had grasped her demanded somewhere to seat 1,000 or more, an audience of the unemployed, admitted free, plus benefactors who would pay only a donation for charity at the end. It had to be possible. In her mind, one image came into focus: Westminster Abbey. But only one concert in one venue. Why not several? And why wait? Why not do it now? Not that arranging anything at all would be easy without the best organised person Yeli knew. "I can't come back," Anna's voice on the telephone was tearful once she was home again. "They say I have to get away from London and out to the country because of the air. I don't know how I'll live without you all." Anna elected to go back to Scotland, to a sanatorium close to her family. The levels of irritability rose in Netherton Grove as the sisters tried to take charge of their own affairs. "It's not the same without poor darling little Annie," Yeli lamented. Whenever she opened the bottom drawer, there was that piece of paper reminding her, ROBERTSCHU, putting together at short notice a major tour involving some of the country's greatest cathedrals was not technically impossible. But Yeli had not anticipated how much work it would take, often requiring quick responses and a good memory. "We ought to have a manager," Adela grunted, punting for a lost note on the back of a receipt. "They'd take over and make us do things we don't want to do," Yeli protested. But she enlisted the help of a well-connected friend, Catherine Tennant, Margot Asquith's half-sister, who was fundraising for alternative employment options. Now, whenever Catherine called her, she needed answers. How much time did she want between concerts? Would she work with a resident organist? Which pieces would they perform? Yeli muddled up her programmes and confused her dates. Her fingers itched for her violin while other concerts loomed. She ought to be practising, not spending so much time on administration. She took a train, alone, dismal without Anna for company, to Devon and back to give a recital, then a train and boat to Belfast and back for a concerto. She lay awake at night, still feeling the motion of wheels and waves beneath her, exhausted beyond the point of sleep. Myra Hess always used to say that the reason there were not more female musicians was that most women are too sensible to want to spend their lives on trains. Yeli agreed, but it would have been much more fun if Myra were there too. Next, she had to play, of all places for an apolitical Hungarian, at 10 Downing Street for Ramsay MacDonald, even though Alec had told her in careful terms that foreigners were starting to be excluded from British concert platforms. "I can't bear it," she said. "It's like 1913 all over again." Yeli had never applied for naturalisation. She felt it would be dishonest to claim to be British when she was not. The scorn she'd experienced on arrival at some venues in the provinces before the war, as a young girl still learning English, had alarmed her. Finding the right words, aged 20, to answer a stranger's tirade, "Why do we have to listen to you when we've plenty of fine musicians of our own?" had not proved easy. It was around then, too, that her mother gently suggested changing their name from the Germanic von Aragni to the French-style equivalent. And her favourite concert hall, the Bechstein Hall, soon had to change its name to the Wigmore Hall, since even German pianos were publicly loathed. Once the war struck and musicians from abroad were banned, she'd been fortunate that the most concert promoters loved her so much that they somehow neglected to check her nationality. No guarantees, though, that this would be the case if it happened again. Alec worried about Oswald Mosley's popularity and had started to call the Daily Mail the Daily Rail, since it regularly roused its readers to decry the number of Jewish immigrants who were arriving to escape the new regime in Germany. After one small organisational cyclone too many in Hurricane House, Alec, perhaps guarding what remained of his peace of mind, decided to diffuse the situation, encouraged by the diplomatic Eric. He suggested that they should treat themselves to a short holiday, A long weekend together in Dorset. It'll do you good, Shy, he insisted. We need to look after you because you're not looking after yourself. You always do look after me, Yeli said. The last thing she wanted was a break. Are you sure? Yeli knew he could see through her attempts at pretense. If you and Auntie want me there, then of course I'll come along. And with Eric? It's fine, said Yeli. Really, it's fine. She tried to defer to Alec, who respected the Baron for his books on Swedish history and his passion for democratic politics, over which detractors used to call him red outside and white beneath. Eric, in return, never missed a chance to compliment Alec on his own book about the Permanent Court of International Justice. Alec's legal work for the League of Nations and Eric's involvement with the organisation, a priority for his government, meant the pair's discussions were cordial at least, or at best, of possible international significance. Now Japan had announced it would withdraw from the League, Alec feared Germany would follow suit. If the League can't even make all those countries agree on a single symbol to represent it, Yeli asked him, and if one country can just walk out and leave if it wants to, how is it supposed to achieve world peace? That's the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be back with the Dorset weekend tomorrow. Thank you.